Melissa was out of breath as she jogged through the kitchen threshold. She had spent much more time at the market than she should have. Again. Excuses raced through her mind just as quickly as the breath in her lungs, but she could not think of anything that would be substantial enough to prevent her dismissal. As she looked around, though, she realized that she was not the only one out of breath. In fact, everyone was running around preparing food. The number of pots and utensils already built up in the washing area suggested quite the feast. But why? They were not supposed to have any guests today. At least, not that they had been told. Now I'll really be in for it, she thought to herself. All hands on deck for a surprise guest, and here she was nearly an hour late. Melissa looked around for the butler to hand over her goods and receive her sacking. She saw him entering from the dining room hall, and he immediately locked eyes with her. She did her best to compose herself as he walked toward her, but could only manage a single deep breath to calm her nerves. She held a basket up for him and gave a slight, submissive tilt to her head. I am sorry I am late. Never mind that, Melissa. It is my duty to inform you that our services are no longer required. He was so matter-of-fact about it. Her eyes began to tear up as she processed his words. She knew that would be the case, but... Wait a minute. Did he say our services? She looked up at him with a curious face. Our services, sir? That is correct, my dear. The Duke has had some... He cleared his throat. Guests arrive. We are to prepare a meal for them and then vacate the manor. The emotionless way he shared this news with her caught Melissa off guard. He had been the Duke's butler for well over a decade, and she had known him for nearly a year. He was a consummate professional, but he would have been forgiven for showing a bit of sadness for being released from a position in which he had so admirably served for so long. The feast for the Duke's guests has already been laid out in the dining room, he continued, but I have also instructed the chef to prepare a going-away meal for the staff. No sense in wasting good food. He gave a quick, half-hearted smile as he told her. So, he did feel a bit of pain after all. He had been a firm but kind household manager, and every staff member respected him for it. This one final gift to them would add a sweet moment to the bitter nature of the quick dismissal. She thanked him, and he left with a nod to take care of whatever final business he felt he needed to realize before leaving. When the food was ready, the maids got first pick, followed by the kitchen staff themselves, whom the groundskeepers felt should get next choice after preparing the meal for them. Then the groundskeepers picked over the remains. The butler had said his goodbyes before the dinner was prepared and did not stay to partake in his final gift to them. There was still plenty to eat, but Melissa only pecked at it. It was difficult to enjoy when her mind had not yet digested the quickness of their dismissal. She had expected to be let go for her tardiness, but the entire staff being let go like this was a shock. One by one, they all left until it was just Melissa. One of her good friends asked to walk her home, but she made an excuse that she was not fully packed and needed a few more minutes. When she was confident that she was alone, she toured the east wing of the house. She had been in every room before, but not unaccompanied, and was curious. She walked into the Duke's study first. There must have been more books here than she could read in an entire lifetime, though that may have been because she was not an accomplished reader. She could read and write just fine, but it was not a daily part of her life. In fact, most of the titles of the books intimidated her, but she found one sitting on the desk, a book of poems. She opened it up and perused its fine words, and, if she was being honest with herself, became captivated by them. What sweet-sounding verse and splendor to hold in one's hand. Some of the poems were of nature's beauty that gave her an appreciation of the world around her. Others of great desire between two people that quickened her heart. She could not bear to put the book down, and so she didn't. Closing the book, she walked out of the study and back into the hall. Surely no one would miss this one book, not when there were so many lining the walls. And if they did, there would be no way to know that it was her who had taken it. Nearly a dozen people had been here less than 10 minutes ago. As she walked by the dining room doors, her curiosity once again struck her. She nudged open the doors and witnessed the feast laid out for the Duke's guest. The sheer volume struck her eyes with sudden desire. Cured meats, fresh fruits, bread, and fine wine. She could not help herself. She sipped some of the wine in a nearby goblet. Just a sip that would not be noticeable to anyone who was not comparing the level of the liquid to another cup. She sampled a cluster of dark red grapes and grabbed a bread roll. She quickly ate a slice of thick-cut ham and then loaded another onto a small plate to take with her. She would leave the plate in her quarters, but she wished to eat more before leaving for good. She took another sip of a different wine goblet to wash the roll down and exited the dining room. As she entered the kitchen, a sharp pain in her stomach gave her pause. But she managed a deep breath and recovered. Taking another 2 steps towards the maid's quarters, the pain struck her again, and she doubled over, only barely managing to maintain control of the plate of food and her book of poems. Still feeling as if a blade were sticking into her midsection, Melissa grabbed for the handle to the quarters. Her hands felt weak, drained of blood, but she did manage to push the door open. She only got a few paces into the room before her legs became too weary to stand, and, with her stomach still in pain, she fell to the floor. She heard the plate of food break against the wood, but she could not see it. Her vision had become darkened as her eyelids became heavy. Still clenching to the book of poems, she collapsed fully under the weight of her own body. She could only lie there on the floor and breathe, and soon, even that became difficult. And as she drew her last breath before losing consciousness, she no longer felt curious.